Good morning. Welcome to Elementary English. My name is Samuel Morris, and I'm glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about point of view and author's perspective with the characteristics that those embody, how and when to use those, and matching point of view to excerpts and situations. So, what is point of view? What is the author's perspective? Well, those I'm going to use interchangeably throughout this video because the point of view is just like it sounds. It's the point of view or the eyes through which the story is told. So the author's perspective at the same time is the perspective, the eyes of the author who is telling the story. So in order to understand and identify point of view, you'll need to know two basic things. Who is telling the story, and to whom they are telling it. Once you know these two basic things, you can take a deep dive into point of view and even use it in your own writing and conversation to convey messages in exactly the way that you want. So the three types of points of view are first, second, and third. First person point of view is a personal point of view. That's why it's called the first person. You'll encounter pronouns like I, me, we, and this point of view gets used for personal stories, for these looks into a story that are more intimate and more personal, but are limited to that one experience. So an example of first-person narration is an autobiography, somebody writing a story about their life. When I used to, and so forth, or now when I am writing this, we have I, and you'll encounter other pronouns like me and we. So while it's this beautiful and very close look into a personal life, it's also limited because we don't get to hear the perspective of everybody else. Another type of point of view is second person point of view. This one's a little bit less common, but it's one of the easiest to spot. Second person point of view is addressed to you, using the pronoun you. So you're going to encounter these when you read directions, or if you've ever picked up a how-to article or a self-help book. Oftentimes, these are written from an author who remains ambiguous or anonymous, and the pronouns that are used are you will, and you can, and you must. They're all about you. So a second person point of view is a more direct experience with writing because it's addressed directly to you. The third person point of view is a very common and popular and traditional storytelling perspective. It uses he, she, or people's names, they, them, and the story is about characters unfolding and their events. So the third person point of view is very common, like I said. It's because it tells you the whole story. And this is a type of point of view that you often use when you're telling a story in which you did not take place. So if I was to tell you a story about my brother and my sister, and I was not there, I would use third person point of view. That's because I'm telling you a story about he and she did, and then this happened to him and this happened to her, and all of that uses those third person pronouns. So it's popular use of perspective that I wasn't there, but I want to tell you this story. The first person point of view is often used in those autobiographies, in stories that you actually were there. And then that second person point of view is when you want to address somebody directly. So we're going to look at a few examples in literature as well as in music. And this is going to help us understand how to identify those and when to use those different points of view and author's perspective. So let's look at some examples together. Our first example is from a popular song by the Beatles titled In My Life. It goes like this. There are places I'll remember, all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better, some have gone and some remain. All these places had their moments, with lovers and friends I can still recall. Some are dead, some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. So we can see clearly that this perspective or point of view used by the Beatles in their lyrics is the first person point of view. It uses that pronoun I. And it's personal. We almost feel like we're hearing the story from that person themselves. It's a direct story in which they took place, and it's oftentimes lending itself to be more intimate and more beautiful experience of that story. Another example we'll look at today is, as you cross the crystal bridge, you hear the sound of two voices coming from the shores of the river. One of the voices sounds distressed, and the other sounds angry. At the end of the crystal bridge is a herd of wild horses. You notice they're stamping the ground quite violently. If you would like to go to shore to find out who's talking, turn to page 47. If you'd like to approach the wild horses, turn to page 58. This is from an interactive book where it addresses you directly, and of course, if we're going to address the reader directly, we're going to use second person point of view. You, that pronoun of you, drawing the reader in directly, speaking to them, that's when you're going to use second person point of view. Lastly, we're going to look at one more example. Deborah was walking a big black Labrador along the beach. The dog was unleashed, but he didn't seem to stray far from her. As Deborah walked in the sand, the Labrador bounded through the waves. As the dog fell a few feet behind Deborah, she called out to him, "Come on, Duke, come here, boy." Duke barked, ran from the water, and caught Deborah quickly. Duke was sopping wet. He started licking Deborah and almost knocked her down. Deborah laughed and tried to wipe the paw prints off her outfit. So we can see here that this is clearly third person point of view. We're telling a story about Deborah and her dog Duke, and I wasn't there. You weren't there. The author was not there either. They're telling you a story about something that happened in which they didn't take place. And that type of storytelling is popular because it tells you the story just like you would see it. The author is putting themselves in your shoes and saying, look, I wasn't there, you weren't there, and we're going to look at this story from the same point of view. So those three types of point of views are used all over narratives and stories. And I'll invite you to pick up a book at home and try it out. For the purpose of this exercise, it has to be a narrative. It's got to be a story. And see how many words it takes you to find out the point of view. I bet it's less than a few sentences. Remember, look for those pronouns like I, me, and we for first person point of view. Look for the pronoun you for second person point of view. And look for he, she, they, them, or a character's name in that third person point of view. I bet you'll find out quicker than you even expect. So that's going to conclude our lesson today on point of view and author's perspective. And I hope it was helpful to understand why some authors write stories like they were there, why some authors write stories directly to you, and why other authors choose to write stories just as they are. And you too can embody these skills and practice these to choose when you would like to use each one for the best effect. Again, I hope this was helpful, and I'm so glad that you joined us today. My name is Samuel Morris. This has been Elementary English, and we'll see you soon.